Hi, guys. Jim Vinosky with Manufacturing Talks here. Got a great show for you today. We are joined by Jason Haines. So he is a lean practitioner, trainer, advisor. He is owner of a company called Industrial Solutions out in Arizona. And he is here to talk to us about all things lean and a lot of cool stuff around that. The thing about Jason that makes him top notch in my book is he came up from the factory floor, spent about 20 years in manufacturing himself. So he's not some, highfalutin going in and telling people how to do their jobs kind of guy. He's going to be in there doing the job with you. So Jason is here on Manufacturing Talks. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
PYS Media, your digital media relations agency. Public relations, website design, digital marketing. You get found by the customers and talent who need your solutions. You get media placements in top publications, the best job candidates coming to your website, a digital presence that gets you found by the right people. Call 616-298-8798 to get started today.
Thanks as always to our sponsor, DYS Media. They're great guys over there. Look them up online. And I'm really happy to be joined today by Jason Haines. He is the owner at Industrial Solutions of Arizona, more broadly ISI. We'll talk about that a little more. Jason, welcome.
How you doing today, Jim?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well here in sunny, hot Arizona. So,
well, I understand you guys have had it pretty rough this summer.
Yes, and the sad thing is, I hate to say it, but my air conditioner actually went out a couple weeks ago, so we kind of had to struggle with that. It wasn't a full just breakdown. It was basically just the compressor would get to the point when it was so hot it just wouldn't run anymore. So had to shut it off for a couple hours, run it through the night, and then we finally got it replaced and everything.
Well, that's definitely a challenge. We have been blessedly cool up here in Michigan this summer, so I'm glad you kept it down there for us.
Yeah. You can some summers you can have it. When I first moved down here, I'm actually from Ohio. Okay. I enjoyed the heat. I worked in a foundry back home, and I enjoyed the heat. Now I'm getting to the point where I'm acclimated. My body's saying, "Nope, no more of this heat stuff."
Yep. Well, so you mentioned there a little bit about your background. Why don't you just tell us, where you're from, what you've done in the past, and how you got into doing what you're doing today?
All right. Thank you, Jim. Once again, I grew up in Southeast Ohio. I know I always say, everybody asks me where I'm from, and I basically tell them BFE, and that's really where I'm from, is in the middle of the sticks. I grew up in the center, almost directly in the center of four different small towns, Coshocton, Zanesville, Mount Vernon, and Newark. Grew up on a farm, working with my granddad, working in blue-collar jobs. Then as I was growing up, Grandpa always talked about different stuff. My dad always told me about not going into manufacturing. I also grew up during the era when everything was going to China and overseas, and we was outsourcing all of our jobs and all of our products to overseas jobs. So they always told us not to go into manufacturing. My mother, she always tried getting us to go into college. I went to college for a couple of years, played baseball in college, was pretty good at it. Decided to leave the college that I was at to go to a different school. Got to knowing friends, started hanging out with them, started doing the college things of partying. I probably partied a little bit too much at that time. And that's where I actually got my love of manufacturing at, was because of the fact that I almost flunked out of school, and my dad got me on at a foundry that he worked at. He was an electrician there, and went there, started working there. At first, I thought I was a failure to my parents, my grandparents, because they always told us never to go into manufacturing for the whole reason everything was going overseas. And a lot of different jobs, there was manufacturing jobs, and there probably still are today. Being in Arizona, there's still a lot of lower paying jobs, and a lot of manufacturing jobs didn't pay that well at that time. But at the foundry that I was working at, it paid very well. Retirement was great. The benefits were great. Loved the environment. It's funny because I like working with my hands. I'm not a mechanic. I won't kid about that. Never was big into working on cars and getting in there and working on cars. I think it's because I also grew up during the era when motors were so tight and it was hard to fix
Right.
everything. And I have what everybody calls meat grinders as far as hands.
Yeah.
So when I put my hands inside of those more complex motors, it was harder to know if you was going to get hit by something or scratched by something or anything like that. But yeah, I just went to the foundry, grew up there, started to get to know people, build the camaraderie with the guys on the floor, became a line lead, and just realized how much I actually love manufacturing. And at the same time, I was also able to get my degree because they had a tuition reimbursement program there.
Yeah.
And that's what I always try to tell people nowadays is find you a place that you may get the experience, the real world experience, but you also get the experience of having that college degree and everything through tuition reimbursement programs or something that those companies provide.
Yep.
And the leadership experience that I got was immense there as far as being able to work with those guys, learn them, build the relationships, figure out how different guys tick to how different things affect different guys. And that's really where I got my passion for lean and leadership and wanting to be part of the manufacturing world.
Yeah. And that's something that caught my eye when we connected on LinkedIn a while back, was that you had come off the factory floor. And, that to me is just critical for folks who do go into leading transformations like you do.
Yeah. And I think it with that experience, I know I had a guy ask me actually on LinkedIn yesterday how I got people to buy into the program. Well, with my experience of being out on the front lines, I was bullheaded when I first went out there. Like I said, yeah. And growing up in the family that I grew up in that always told me not to go into manufacturing, in the back of my head, I always thought, like I was saying earlier, I thought I was a failure by going into manufacturing because I thought I let my parents down. I let my grandparents down. I didn't go into getting a college degree right away. Mm-hmm. But as I worked through everything and realized there was other pathways, just like they talked about today with being an apprentice as far as electrician or mechanic or something like that, there's other pathways to get to that goal. Right. You don't always have to take that straight and narrow path of being just going to college and graduating college. Because a lot of times the sad thing is those guys that graduate college have to work through building relationships with the guys, and a lot of the guys out on the front lines don't always trust the guys that come straight out of college because It's always that, they don't know anything the phase. And if you're not willing to build those relationships, a lot of those guys will push back hard against you and make your job miserable.
Yep. So tell us more about then how you made that transition out of the factory and into this consulting role.
So how I made the transition, I really got the passion for lean. I've always been interested in processes, always been interested in studying processes. I think I get that from my dad with the electrician and troubleshooting and being able to learn just different machines, how it works. The foundry I worked in, we made train wheels, and we had machines that had a bunch of limit switches and how different things worked. And if it hit this limit switch, this thing worked, and just how the process worked. Well, if something broke down, it was kind of my job as a lead to know what the problem was and what was occurring in the problem and explain it to the electrician. So that's really where I got my passion for lean, was starting to troubleshoot those jobs before the electrician or mechanic got there. That way it would make it a lot easier for them to fix. So with lean, I would go, I tied that into where I would go out and start taking a look at people's processes and learning those processes and then building a plan on how different things work, but whether it's through mapping it out to start out with, and then go through the process of talking to the employees, building the relationships, understanding how they work, and then each step in the process, and then start talking to different people in order to bring that whole process together and where to move machines, how machines move, because sometimes you can't move machines as far as where they can go to. Other times you can, and it's a little bit easier to move those processes, but just try to figure out the best pathway. And a lot of it, like I said, was just learning how to troubleshoot machines in the first place. And then I just developed that into troubleshooting processes and mapping them out. And also through my leadership of being the line lead of building relationships with the employees that I was with.
Yep. So how did the opportunity with ISI come about then?
So the opportunity with ISI came about. I really wanted to be able to help other companies rather than just the companies that I was working with. I wanted to grow that experience as far as going out and seeing other process. Like I said, I got a passion for manufacturing. Never thought I would. I wanted to see other processes, be able to get into other companies, and also help other places out because of I really realized when I developed my own processes, I was able to help other people out. And I realized in order to help other people out, I needed something such as what ISI has, a training package and a consulting package to go into those places, talk to them and develop their plans and help them grow their processes. So really the whole ISI was, I wanted to help other companies out.
Okay. Yep. So let's talk some about lean implementation. I imagine everyone out there associated with manufacturing could tell you stories about initiatives like that failed. What is it in your mind that kind of sets you up to succeed versus, have a program of the day that eventually drops away?
The biggest thing that helps me succeed is, like I said, is I was bullheaded at first and didn't think lean was a big thing as far as would be successful. When I worked at the foundry, at one time before I had got there, they were trying to implement lean, and it was always less employees are needed, is what a lot of them always said, because they would always joke that when they would try to implement lean, they would eliminate a job. So that's where the less employees are needed came from.
Yep.
So at the time, I kind of stepped back from it, and then one day when I first moved down here, I was working in an aluminum manufacturer, and I asked a guy how I could really advance my career and everything, and he told me to look into the Six Sigmas and the Lean Six Sigmas.
Right. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I like Six Sigma, but it takes a lot of work to do the whole Six Sigma. I'm more into the lean because it's more of a practical use. You can put it out on the floor. It's easier for people at the front lines to understand.
So let me break in there real quick. Yep. Top line, just give a broad kind of definition of each so folks aren't familiar with the difference.
Okay, so lean is really your practical purposes, part of your processes, implementing a tool set, where Six Sigma is more of a in-depth, taking statistical the process controls and trying to figure out what the defects are to help people out. Yes, the data use and everything is good, but it's more of your front office where people can sit down and actually explore the data. Right. The people at the front lines usually don't have the time for that.
Yeah, so coming from where you come from, lean makes all the sense in the world, right?
Yes, perfectly. And that's what I said. I like going out to the front lines. I like talking to the people. I like helping with their processes, trying to figure out what, as Paul Akers always says, what bugs you. Going out there and figuring out what bugs them and helping to solve that process and help them with that process. And the biggest place I figured it out was the first time I implemented lean. I tried implementing it to the processes that the people were working. Well, I didn't have enough time to constantly go out and always help them as far as the job that I had. And figured out, okay, maybe I need to figure out my processes before I start implementing it to other people. So I developed a process to where I reduced my time down from 60 to 70 hours a week down to 30 hours that I was working. So I had more time to go help other people. It really did that through 5S, through value stream mapping, just trying to figure out what would make my process much better. The big one that I found the most was visual workplace management, or I always call it standard work, because of the fact that it helps make it easier for somebody like myself, because the company I was working for, I didn't know any of the products, didn't know any of the parts. The visual workplace management actually helped me learn those parts, learn those products, learn where they was at, how they worked in the process and everything. And it also helped people that were new hires come in and do the same thing.
Yep. Makes sense. Where is it that people fail then? What happens that makes the wheels come off of all the kind of, horror stories you hear out there?
I think from my experience, where people fail is we're busy in our own job So we try to implement it into another process, like I said, at the front line.
Mhm.
Well, then they still have questions afterwards. Well, you're still busy doing your job. And I believe you really need to work on your job first and streamline your job before you can go and start streamlining other processes. Because of that busyness, you get frustrated with those people and you think, why aren't they figuring this out? Well, they're not figuring it out because really it's all about leadership and being out there and talking to the people and helping them understand, well, if you're busy with your job, you're not able to be out there and help them with their job because you have you can't serve two masters. So if you're too busy in your job, you can't help the people at the front line.
So that's a really interesting point. I don't think I've ever heard it before. And what you're saying is you're challenging the people who would lead these initiatives to use the principles of lean to streamline what they're doing, so they have the time to spend with the people that then they're going to help implement on the floor.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
from
cool.
my experience, that's what I've seen that hurt me the most. The very first time I implemented a lean program was I was too busy in my job and needed to streamline my job before I was able to go out and start helping other people out.
Yep.
Because
well, and by doing that, you're mastering those principles too, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Huh,
yes.
Interesting. Okay, so you mentioned a few of the tools. If you had to pick, say, 2 or 3 of the most effective and maybe easiest to establish and succeed with tools, what would you recommend for folks to start with?
I used to laugh at people when they would always say 5S was the first place to start. And really, to be honest with you, it is the first place to start, if you ask me, after thinking about it even more in depth. And the reason is because of standardization. And when I say standardization, I know a lot of people think, oh, we have to basically put blinders on and work a certain way and everybody's got to do everything the same way. When I'm talking standardization, I'm talking about having a process set into place, much like what you would see in for a football team. The football team always has a set play as far as their basic. Take Urban Meyer, for instance, that coached at Florida, Ohio State, Boise State, and another place. I think it was Boise State, but it doesn't matter. Neither here nor there. He had a set package that he had. Well, standardization really gives you that set. So if you do decide to change anything, if it doesn't work, you can come back to that set and be able to build on it and make other changes and learn from where you made mistakes. Yep. So really, that's where I think that you start at is the 5S.
Yep. Well, and based on what you said before, that also makes perfect sense. And for folks who may not be up to speed, not to go in depth, but 5S is really a dejunking and organizing, cleaning, and standardizing process. And what you said around streamlining your own situation before you get started, that just flows right from it, right? You're streamlining what folks are doing, getting the junk out of the way and standardizing on things so that there's not that kind of chaos that you can typically have on a plant floor.
And that's another reason that I really think that 5S is the big thing, because it has been proven that chaos doesn't create people that think, because they're constantly have to look out for other problems and other issues happening. So they aren't able to create a better process. So once you eliminate that chaos and that busyness and that the stuff that is affecting their job each and every day, you're able to start creating people that are able to think about things instead of them having to react. They're able to be proactive and create a better process.
I had a great lesson on that years ago. I was starting up some new packaging lines, and right there in the heat of the battle, and we're not running well, and there's junk all over the floor and product strewn everywhere. We're just trying to get to where things are operating. And my boss came out and was walking through, and he stopped where I was, and he goes, "Shut it down. Just shut it down." So we shut it down. He says, "Look," and I'm not going to use the language he used, but I'll paraphrase here. If it looks like poop, it runs like poop.
Yep.
Gotcha. We cleaned up. We started back up. Things went a little better after that.
Well, and that's the nice thing that he actually let you do that, because a lot of
Right.
places,
Yeah. It takes time.
yeah, a lot of places won't even let you do that. It's you
Right.
got to run through the process, and a lot of times people just put their heads down and
Try to
they're
batter through.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they're put in the environment that they work in, the environment that they're given,
Yep.
because a lot of people at the front lines, they don't always know the direction that they need to go in because they weren't always given the resources to go in. And that's
Yep.
really what you're trying to do, is help them understand, I'm here to help you get in that direction and
Yep.
help you maybe grow. And that's one of the things that was another reason I really liked lean, was because of the fact that I worked with a lot of guys that could have been mechanics or could have been
Mhm.
supervisors, but they didn't have time to take courses, or they didn't have time to learn to be a mechanic while they was working there. Where
Yep.
lean sometimes it shaves that time down to where they have time to train while they're working and
Yep.
everything.
Yeah. Well, I think my boss at the time gave both a good operational lesson and a good leadership lesson, because it really is up to leaders to be able to take that step back and, you know, assess the situation and realize, yeah, what we're doing right now is not working.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
and, it's no knock on people. I think you mentioned blinders earlier. We all get blinders from time to time. And
Mm-hmm.
when you're in the heat of the battle like that, you're just focused on trying to make things work. And you're not realizing, yeah, if everything up there is junk, everything coming this way is junk. It's not going to work here, and it's not going to
Yes.
work downstream.
Yes, exactly. And the more you send it downstream, the more problems you're going to have. And at the
Right.
end of the day, everybody's going to be frustrated, not just
Right.
the person that's working in the area that's starting the problem.
Yep. Yep.
So
What would you say are some then higher level things? So you've knocked out 5S and maybe gotten going on that standardization. Where do you go from there and challenge yourself once you're good at that kind of thing?
I think the higher level things is more of your value stream mapping, or your mapping.
Mhm.
I shouldn't say value stream mapping, because sometimes value stream mapping, that's an extremely high level process, because
Yep.
you're going to need to know pretty much the nuts and bolts. But as far as high level for frontline or supervisory work or middle management, is having a mapping process and understanding the process throughout the area, whether that's a spaghetti chart or just a regular process map, or understanding how everything runs through your whole process. I know the company I recently worked at or worked with, we did a spaghetti chart, and they kept the biggest struggle they were having was actually all the processes were drying up as far as getting their product through the process. And after we did their spaghetti chart and figured out how everything worked, the very first process coming out of their press room was basically sorting through all these pictures. And nobody liked doing the job. Don't get me wrong. I did the job for 6 hours one day, and Jim, it was boring. It was boring. And by the end of the day, I was wondering if I was going to be able to drive home, because you're just sitting here seeing all these pictures, trying to sort just the different colors so you could get it to the cutting station.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't know how people could do this job all day. And I understand why it was their bottleneck, because people didn't want to do that job. I mean, it was just mind numbing and not really fun. And that's where you come in and you start doing those start doing those mapping processes, and you start to realize, hey, maybe I can have somebody come in, take a look at this, and be able to put a robot in.
Right.
Or some kind of automation to help them, so you don't have to worry about those people. Because a lot of people want to come in, they want to do a great job. There's very few people that don't want to do a great job when they
Mhm.
first come in. And you want them to not do those mind-numbing jobs, because when they do those mind-numbing jobs, usually they end up quitting not too long after, if that's all they think that they're going to end up
Mhm.
doing.
Yeah.
So really mapping, taking a look at your processes. Standard work is a big one or visual workplace management is a big
Yeah.
one that I see in a lot of places that I go into that needs to be done, just because people need to know the score, and they need to understand the process, and they need to know how they're doing the process. And it also, in my experience, it helps with training the new hires and people coming into your processes.
Right. Yep. And again, so for people that aren't aware, that's really basically having it very visible what the expectations for people are and how you're doing in real time against those expectations, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you've mentioned people a couple of times, and I've always said lean is centered on people, and
Yes.
that's where it needs to start. And I hear that from you 100%. And even that automation piece, I found interesting. You talking about this job that bored you to tears, and therefore, it's going to bore pretty much anyone to tears. That really is another benefit of lean, is truly learning these processes and knowing not just what's boring, but also what can be dangerous, what can
Yes,
be
exactly.
especially dirty and uncomfortable. Those are the kind of jobs you want to automate, right?
Yes, yeah, and that's where you can also start once you start going through those processes such as move or mapping and everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can start understanding. Okay, this is a bottleneck. Nobody's working here, but you can start asking those questions as, okay, why does nobody want to work in this area? Because a lot of times the supervisor hasn't done that job, or the frontline management hasn't done that job, or your production managers, plant managers haven't done that job.
Right.
So you want to try to start figuring out why people don't want to work there. And once you start asking those questions, you get the answers and making people feel comfortable with actually opening up to you. You're able to start to make the changes that need to be properly made. I mean, if you're not willing to go through the work at the beginning and getting an understanding of your processes, your actual processes, not the processes that you think are going on,
right,
you're probably not going to be successful. Like I said before, if you're not going to work on reducing the busyness of your job, you're probably not going to be successful at implementing anything into your physical workforce.
Yep. Well, and we talked about automation and that being one solution to that kind of thing, but really getting to know where the hangups are for people,
yes,
introduces you to a variety of solutions, right?
Yeah, exactly. The variety of solutions, and then you're able to take a look at what you have on hand. Because sometimes a lot of places I've worked at, you start to take a look at your processes and realize, okay, we was using this for this over here. We cleaned that completely off, and we're able to put it into this position and use it here instead of where we had it before, and not have to spend any money on machinery or robots or new tables or anything. You start to get stuff organized and put into place to make it easier and make it flow better throughout the process.
Yep.
Pardon me. And also be able to use things that were being used elsewhere for that part of the process.
Yeah. So yeah, find some solution that takes away that problem that makes people not want to work in that particular cell or on that particular job.
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. And that goes to another thing. And you mentioned in our interactions before you got on here that you've got a passion also for workforce development and addressing this worker shortage. Talk a little bit about that.
So the biggest, like I said, with lean, you can reduce the amount of time you're producing parts, and once you get into the nuts and bolts of everything and studying your processes. And I know in the past, in a lot of places I've worked at, we've always had the tendency of when we run out of work, we send people home. Mm-hmm. And those are perfect times that we could have been training those employees.
Right.
There's a lot of people at the front lines, and a lot of people I call friends nowadays that I've worked with in the past that would have been great in supervisory positions or in maintenance positions. And that's one of the places that we struggle with. Jim, as you probably know, in manufacturing, I know they always talk about the employee shortages and the problems with the not having any skilled workers. We've dealt with that since I can't remember. It's probably been going on back when my dad was younger, as far as that goes. Because I remember when I first walked into a manufacturing facility, a lot of times it was you hired an electrician and it was somebody that was low skilled, not really didn't have any idea what was really going on, got trained at a trade school, and you probably could have grabbed somebody from the floor, put them in an apprenticeship program, and put somebody in that position that could have learned that job. And for whatever reason, and I don't know where it all started, my dad grew up as far as the apprenticeship program. Mm-hmm. In today's world, we don't have those apprenticeship programs. And I really think that we need to bring those back. And one way to do that is through lean, by finding ways to reduce the time that they spend on jobs, or also finding those, but when you're out there working with the people at the front lines, finding their talents and understanding them and realizing, hey, this person could probably be a great electrician or a great mechanic, and putting them into that position or into an apprenticeship or sending them to a trade school to help them find that way or pathway. And that's where I really think the employee shortage problem is really happening. Is a lot of people, well, one, like myself, was told not to go into manufacturing,
Right.
and two, go into manufacturing and get to the job and realize that it's redundant task where you're sorting through pictures, and there's really no pathway to become better. And I think that's what we need to take a look at the processes and realize that we need to bring people into something that they can see a pathway to grow in that process.
Yeah. We always talk about lean and the development of the frontline workers and helping the frontline workers, but everything you just said also points to another value that we don't talk much about, and that is the development of leadership and the development of people higher up in the food chain, getting them onto the floor, getting them to know the people, getting them to engage on these kinds of problems like the workforce development. And I think, the problem has always existed, but it is, to me, a little bit worse now because we have this stratification of the white collar, blue collar management worker kind of thing that we didn't used to have to the degree we do today.
Yeah, and I really think it has gotten worse. Don't get me wrong, like I said, in manufacturing, we've dealt with it for a long while, but it's gotten worse where it feels like, one, people don't want to communicate with each other.
Right.
And sometimes it's, like I said before, people, when your parents basically say, hey, I need you to go to college, or the people around you are constantly telling you need to go to college in order to get a great paying job, and you keep hearing that. Well, manufacturing, I read this the other day. Somebody said manufacturing used to be thought of as it was just a menial task. People that worked, the smartest people in the world went and worked in manufacturing jobs. And I think that's what a lot of people think. If they get a manufacturing job, or a blue collar job for that matter, they just think of it as, well, I'm not really in something that I should be in, or there's something that'll help me out or help the world out. And they want to do better. And then they feel like they're less than, I should say. And then you get the people that go to college. Sometimes they don't think that they're supposed to go out on the front lines and start to talk to those people. And they kind of get an air of superiority sometimes, per se. I know in the past I've done that, as far as thinking that, like I said, that I went into manufacturing, and at first I thought that I was a failure and going into it, and was supposed to get my college degree and become better, and thought I was better than those people. Well, then I start to talk to the people, build those relationships, gain the camaraderie with them, and realize there's a lot of very talented people there. And there's a lot of very talented people in the front office and a lot of times they just aren't communicating, or they're, per se, speaking two different languages, but saying the same thing.
Yep. Well, and not valuing the work in either direction. That doesn't help in any case. And I think when it comes to manufacturing, a piece of lean should also be celebrating what our frontline workers are doing. I've always said manufacturing is the crucible of the business world, because there's no hiding, right?
Yes.
You're either making stuff that you can sell at a profit, or you're not. And if you're not, you're out of business.
Exactly.
And so, I love what you're saying about, getting people back together and building that camaraderie and those knock-on benefits of focusing on your production and on your processes and systems.
Yes. Yeah. And that's really what you're trying to do, is just to get everybody to work together, realize that you're not too good for a certain area, or you're not smart enough for a certain area. That you're always trying to include everybody. I know we always talk that you hear about everybody talking about inclusivity nowadays. Right. To me, lean was all about including everybody. And if you didn't work out in a certain spot, they wasn't going to get rid of you. They would find a spot for you to work out in.
Yep. Love that. That'll be headline of this episode. Lean is about inclusivity, because it is. You're absolutely
Yes.
right.
Yep.
Another piece of that too is, and you just mentioned it, you're never too good. You can move up the ladder and get to wear nicer clothes and all that. But I was thinking as you talked, when executives come through, what do people at the plants do?
Usually they freak out. They don't.
Before they arrive.
Oh yeah, we clean up everything. That's
We get rid of all the stuff that we have in the day-to-day world, so that our executives don't see what's going on in the room.
or the ISOs, the ISO audits when they come. You do everything the opposite of what you're actually doing as far as how you're actually doing the frontline process.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying ISO is a bad thing, but it's just like a lot of other things that a lot of times what it says and what we're doing at the front lines don't match at all. Because we figured out there's actually a better way, and a lot of times we haven't communicated that across the management and everything, and it gets lost, or it doesn't get lost. It gets put on a back burner as far as seeing that process. And the funny thing is a lot of times how they're doing it on the front line actually compared to what is in the SOP and everything is usually better, more efficient, safer, and higher quality of what it says in the SOP.
Yeah. Which, to me goes to another whole thing of lean is you're focused on getting everyone together there on the floor, doing the jobs and being honest about the conditions. And then, hopefully improving the ones that aren't working well.
Yes, exactly.
Interesting stuff. We're almost out of time. Is there anything we haven't touched on here yet that you want to get out there, Jason?
Nothing that I can think of right offhand, other than just when you're going out to perform lean. Like I said, first take a look at your own processes. Make sure you're not too busy to put it out into the front lines. Because another thing I probably forgot to touch on: if you're too busy for other people, they start to resent you. Because they think that their jobs are not important, and then you're just throwing stuff on them. So take care of your own job first, and then start to help other people out.
Yep. Very well said. You've hit on numerous good points. This is going to be a great episode to get out there. I appreciate you joining us today, Jason. Where do people find you if they want to learn more about what you do?
So a lot of times just look me up on LinkedIn or reach out to me through our website of isiworld.net. And you can find my email, my phone number on there. If I don't answer your phone, your phone call, leave a message. A lot of times I get the other phone calls that come in that if they don't leave a message that I don't answer. If you leave a message, I call you right back.
All right. Jason Haines with Industrial Solutions out in Arizona. Thank you for being with us.
I thank you, Jim.
And I do hope things cool down a little out there for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, to all of you guys, thanks as always for joining us. We're here. We try this again. We are here every Tuesday, so tune back in. I can't promise it's all going to be as educational as it has been with Jason, but it will be educational. Thanks again.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.